I served for many years, 13 years in fact, with the security forces in Northern Ireland as an officer of the Ulster Defence Regiment. I lost a number of friends both in the police and the army.
My uncle coming home, who'd been in a prisoner of war camp in Germany for 3 years, that was upsetting because he found it difficult. He never ever spoke about what happened. At the time, it didn't matter to me because I was quite wee. But later on, I wish I had asked him a bit more about it, but he didn't ever want to speak about what happened in the prisoner of war camp.
It's important because many generations ago, lots of people, young men and young ladies, did a massive sacrifice on all of our behalves for freedom, to ensure that we lived in the world we live in today, and we've got to remember that sacrifice they made.
When you consider all the many lives that were lost, particularly during the two major conflicts between Great Britain and their allies and Germany and Germany's allies, and to understand that in effect we were fighting for the cause of freedom.
On Remembrance Day, I usually go out to buy some poppies as well as the wristband pins, and then I also go to watch the Remembrance Parade.
It's important to me because I spent 32 years in the army, and over that period of time I had a few friends who died in the service of the country. But prior to that, of course, we had certainly the First World War, Second World War, and a number of wars in between, where if it wasn't for those people sacrificing their lives, or prepared to sacrifice their lives, then we probably would not be enjoying the lives that we have.
I think there are so many reasons why remembrance is important that it's going to be quite hard for me to summarise. I think it's part of our nation's history, and being an historian, I'm really involved in retelling the nation's history to students all the time, and this is very much part of that. But it's something that we can all relate to because it's local history and it's family history as well. And I think for me, maybe it started with stories from my granddad, who was in the Second World War, and he was at Dunkirk, and he was at Tobruk, and he was captured, and he was a prisoner of war. And he survived, but so many didn't survive, and I think we owe it to them, the young lads and lasses as well, but the young people who never really had a chance maybe at living a full life, at having their own families. Some of them, you know, in the First World War especially, were very young, died very young, never had a chance to have a family. And their families you can't recover from losing a member of your family, and I don't think they should be forgotten, and their stories are.
We can't remember people here who we never knew, but we can think of their sacrifice, and that's what I do here in Carlisle. Those who I knew who died, and those who died over 100 years ago.
I think remembrance should be important to everyone. We all have families, we're a part of a community, a city, a state, and everything we do and think nowadays is influenced and coloured by the memories we have in the past.
I lost my grandfather, who was 22, who never saw my mother, and she always, you know, not knowing her dad. I didn't know my granddad, and yet my son is the model of his granddad from the photos I've seen, so it brings it all back to the family, really. And one of the things, my grandma lived till she was 70, in her mid-70s, but she was always remembering her husband, who was only 22 when he died, so it kept her very young.
It's important to remember everyone that gave any form of sacrifice in the wars. Anyone, whether they gave their life or not, deserves to be remembered, because that was a difficult time that we couldn't even imagine now.
Well, of course, at a personal level, I remember the people that I know from my own family, those that have passed over now, like my parents, my grandparents, and dear friends that have already passed. But having served in the military, I also think that I have a wider picture of the sacrifices being made by servicemen and women for our country all over the world.
It is
terribly important for me as a soldier, because I have seen a few fellow soldiers killed as a result of enemy action. And the remembrance part of it is when, of course, we come together to remember those in the past, those currently, and whatever, who have died in the line of duty, looking after and serving the country. Why is it important? Well, it's so we never forget their memories, but they live on. And in fact, all across the country, and particularly the National Arboretum in the Midlands, all the soldiers, sailors and airmen who have died since 1945, for example, appear on one big tablet, by year and by name in alphabetical order. And it's a very moving process to see this. So much so that I noticed when I went to visit that in 1988, I think it was, we unfortunately lost 3 young officers in Canada on a training exercise. And it really did open my eyes to see that on the wall of remembrance at the National Arboretum were the names of those 3 folk. I had forgotten them, but somebody had remembered them and put their name up there so anybody who came along could see and remember. And it's terribly important for the families and for the memory of the individual.
The boys in Trinity School who died in the First World War, and we've got 91 of them, they were in every field of conflict. We had men in the Royal Flying Corps, we had men in the Merchant Navy, in the Royal Navy, one died at Jutland. We had, half of them were in Belgium and France, in the trenches of Belgium and France, but we also had men in Italy, in Greece, in Turkey, in Mesopotamia, which is modern day Iraq, in Africa, in India. We had men from our school who went to Canada, who went to Australia, who went to New Zealand, and came back and fought for us. And they could just be names on the remembrance board in the old hall, but in fact, by researching them, by telling the stories again, it makes them live a little bit more. And because they lived in this area, many of them met in the grounds of Carlisle Castle and things, so they trained up at the racecourse. It's local, and there's nothing, you can't beat a bit of it being local, where someone says, well, I know where that street is, I know where that house, they came to the school, they sat in this classroom. So remembrance is really important for that. And I think also it's a hard question to think what would we have done if circumstances were similar for us. So I think it has real deep questions for us about how we live and what we do and the choices that we make and just how brave they were.